Okay, start to finish, my sourdough process. So I keep my starter in the fridge. I just go in the fridge and I grab the starter. It has a lid. I never do anything with it except for keep it in the fridge and refill it as needed. When I take it out, I just give it a little stir, and that just incorporates everything. If there is a black layer of liquid on the top because you haven't used your starter in a long time, it is okay. This is my chart I keep on the inside of my cabinet, and I decide how many loaves I'm gonna make. That chart is on the end of this video. Then I take my big proofing container and I pour my starter in it, and I weigh it out depending on how many loaves I'm making, which is on the chart. I add water, filtered water to it, and up to whatever the chart says for that many loaves. And then I add my salt to it. At this recipe, I'm using enough for 4 loaves. So I just go ahead and combine those things. After it's all together, I put in the flour. Again, it's on the chart for how many loaves I'm going to use, and stir that all together. The scale is a must-have. You really cannot do this sourdough bread without a good scale. So I stirred all together. Because I don't do a lot of stretch and folds, I really knead it well. The more work you do at the beginning, the better. Make sure you get all that starter off of your tools because it will destroy your pipes. So I use a lot of paper towels to clean everything off, and then I wash my hands, and then I wash my tools. So this is me kneading the sourdough as much as I can just to get it all together. That's what it looks like. Then I just take everything off my hands, put the lid on, and I leave it for like 30 minutes, but you don't have to. You do not have to do stretch and folds. Sometimes I just like to. If you don't want to do stretch and folds, just leave it on the counter with a lid on while it ferments. Later, I'll show you how to recognize when it's ready to start pre-shaping. Okay, now it's time to feed my starter while everything's resting. I use rye flour and all-purpose flour. Rye flour, the yeast just love it. It makes bubbles so much faster, so I go ahead and do that. Again, there's a chart at the end of this video that will show you how much I use to feed my starter. I use filtered water, and I stir it all up. All this is equal amounts of flour to equal amounts of water. So if you have 150 grams of flour, you're gonna have 150 grams of water. Stir it all together. I usually wipe the sides because I feel like that could get a little moldy. If it gets too gross, I usually have 2 of these containers, and I'll pour the one container into the other, and I put it right back in the fridge, and I keep it there. No feeding, no discard, nothing. So then 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, whatever, I do my first stretch and folds. The dough's a little sticky and weak at first. You'll probably have to clean off your hands again. So this is what I do. I just hold the bowl, I stretch that dough out really good, and I fold it over. And as you go around the bowl doing this, it's gonna get tighter and tighter, which means you're strengthening the gluten and making it so that it's gonna have good tension later when you bake your dough. So I'm just going around a few times until I'm tired of it. So this is up close of what I'm doing. I'm grabbing a whole bunch of dough, kind of shaking it and stretching it, and then just turning it a little bit, and I'm continuing to go around the bowl. Okay, so that's what it looks like before. I'm going to put the lid back on and wait a little longer. Again, you do not have to do this to make good dough. If you have to go somewhere, don't bring your dough with you to do stretch and folds. A lot of the internet tells you need to do that and you need to be exact, but you really, really don't. I'm dumping it out on the counter because I like to switch to coil folds. Basically, I'm picking up the dough and I'm like slapping it on the counter, creating some tension, and then rolling it. And then I turn it halfway. I do it again. So I turn, slap, and fold. And then I make this nice little ball of dough, and I turn my bucket over, and it just makes the top of the dough look so pretty. It shows me a little bit more of when it's about ready to start shaping. So you can see here that there are little bubbles. It's not so sticky. It kind of boings back when you push it. Your hands are not like sticking to the dough, and you can stretch it pretty well without the dough tearing. That's called kind of the window pane test. So yeah, I'll show you up close what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of making a little bit of tension. And what I'm doing now is a window pane test. So I'm stretching it out pretty thinly, and you can see how it's not tearing. I mean, if I ripped it really hard, it'll tear, but this dough's pretty ready to go. You can see the little bubbles on the surface. It just looks so pillowy. When you're just starting out, you are going to need to inspect your dough quite often. Doing 4 loaves will ferment the dough faster because the dough is warmer. The dough will not double in size. It'll actually only increase by maybe 25%. If you do only 1 loaf, it will double in size and it'll take about 10 to 12 hours. But just always remember that it depends on the temperature of your dough. If your kitchen is cold, it's going to go slower. If it's hot, it's going to go faster. Okay, so now I've decided it's time to pre-shape. What I'm doing now is I am weighing each one of my loaves. Now I'm making 4 loaves here. Every single loaf you make with this recipe is 36 ounces in weight. So that's what I'm doing. I'm measuring for 36 ounces. So here I am shaping it by grabbing the sides, kind of like the stretch and fold situation. You're grabbing the sides one at a time, kind of going around the ball, and you're making good tension. You want to kind of stretch it a little bit and then fold it over, and then stretch a little bit and fold over, kind of like in a star or a spiral. So here I formed my ball. I turned it over into the bowl. And I'm also kind of like sewing it together at the top, stitching it, and that also helps with tension. This is another way that I fold my dough. I kind of do it like a blanket or something. I fold a third of it up on one side. I do the same to the other side. And I kind of crisscross. So see how I'm taking the other side, I'm kind of crisscrossing back and forth. And now I'm going to roll it up and make good tension. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the dough towards me and pushing it away from me. And you can see how I'm turning it a little bit. As I'm pushing it, I'm rotating it a little bit. And as I'm pulling it, I'm rotating a little bit. And my hands are underneath the dough, so it's not rolling like a marble, but it's rolling to pull tension on the top of the dough. Sometimes I put flour on my liners, and that'll help it come out really well. Always go upside down and then kind of stitch the top so it's good tension. Okay, here's another way. Instead of using the liner, I use spray, and you can do the same thing. Form your dough into a ball and then turn it upside down in the bowl with the olive oil spray. In this case, I think it was like avocado oil spray or something like that. Stitching it up the same exact way. And I cover each of the bowls with shower caps, food grade. When I'm ready to cook them, usually the day after, I take them out of the fridge, and then I lay parchment paper on the counter, and I just dump the dough right on the parchment paper. Then I'm going to take my little blade and I'm going to just form an X about 1 centimeter deep. This allows for it to expand upward. So you can do these cuts with scissors. They don't have to be pretty, or you can just buy a blade and just change out the blade every once in a while. Put them in my Dutch oven, stick the lid on, and put it right into a cold oven. And then I heat my oven to 425, and I do it for an hour, and I don't take the lid off. I don't test anything. I just leave it in for an hour. And then when I take it out, I test the temperature, making sure that it's at least 205 degrees. Sometimes people like to have a nicer crust on the top, but you can just play around with it. If you want to take the lid off for 5 minutes at the end, go ahead. But it's just not necessary. In fact, I kind of like it better when it's not a hard crust because I can bite into it easier and cut into it easier. Again, the temperature needs to be 205 degrees Fahrenheit or more. I forgot to mention that inside this Dutch oven, there is a silicone trivet. It helps so much to prevent a hard crust. It's much easier to cut if you let it cool. So I always cut it in half first, and then look how soft that bottom is. Nice and airy.
Notice how I lay cut side down. It's much sturdier this way. I also feel like the bread lasts longer when there are smaller pieces. The bread in our house lasts about a day or two, and I just stick it in this wooden bowl and stick a little shower cap on top of it. And I always have butter right next to it with the spoon so the kids can just have at it. Here are some examples of things that I've bought for my sourdough journey. I'll leave links in the caption below. And as promised, here is my sourdough recipe chart. Notice the starter amounts at the bottom. Remember, you don't have to do that exactly, but just remember equal weight, flour, and water.